Hello everybody, Mike Gable, Pontoon Hydrofoil Applications, and we are doing a VARA plate install on a Yamaha 2014 edition F90LA. And we noticed that we don't have the exact VARA plate for this, but we do have 5 models available currently right now. And so there's two choices, right? The first choice is, do we go ahead and find one of our 5 models that fits, which our 5 models will generally fit 75% of the motors to date right now. We understand that Tohatsu is a big player in the lower unit market for some of the manufacturers. But we found that the Evinrude E-Tech Magnum lower unit, which is, I believe, 2012 before. I think it goes from 2006 2012. I believe it's known as a Magnum unit, lower unit, and that unit for the 75 and 90 horsepower is extremely close to this Mercury 90. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some very slight modifications to this plate to fit it, rather than going ahead and go into our second method. Our second method is that we would mail you a clear, transparent Mylar sheeting. That Mylar sheeting would go over the ventilation plate, and then you would draw underneath of the ventilation plate. After you made it fit to the ventilation plate, you would draw underneath of it the ventilation plate diameter completely around with a magic marker. You would then send us that back, and we would take that, put it onto our CAD program. We digitize it, put it on a CAD program, and then it would go to our CNC builder, and they would CNC you a new plate. So, you know, depending upon your time frame and exactly what you wanted to do, there are these slight modifications that can be done to the existing units to have one up and running immediately, or we can get you one within 7 to 10 days. So what we're going to do today is we're going to show you exactly what we do to that unit, the existing one, to make it fit. It's pretty straightforward. So we're going to go into a different frame rate of a video to show you that. Okay, everybody, what we did was we did a 2 frames for every one slow motion for y'all, and hopefully you got to see what we did. We made this Evinrude Magnum VARA plate fit this F90 Yamaha. It's really the perfect size, and so we went ahead and made it fit. It took us approximately 10 minutes to do the modifications, and as you can see, what we'll do is we'll screw this plate up here as per our screw pattern, and then this will be mounted and complete. Okay, what we can do is show you down below exactly the modifications that we did and how they fit. Here was the modifications up front. Okay, here was the slight minimum modifications to the side, and then here are the modifications to the back to get this thing to match the back end and be flush with it. So those are the modifications we made on both sides to make this fit. After you do those modifications, as we showed you, I'm going to take this off, and you always tilt it to take it off. Okay, we went ahead and we radiused these corners right here, all along the edge here, where they may meet the lower unit radius in here. So if you notice, there's a radius for the lower unit, and what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are not sitting on that ledge if we were to just have a square fit with that edge to the VARA plate. So we radius it to duplicate that fillet that's there, and that makes it so that the fit is nice and flat and flush, and this thing fits extremely nicely. Okay, everybody, we're here installing the VARA plate, and what we have done in a previous video is we showed you how to modify it to where the VARA plate, which wasn't this exact model, was a close fit. We offer 5 VARA plate models, and so rather than sending me a template back and us getting that to our CNC builder and then getting it back to you and having a 7 to 10 day wait, if it's a small minuscule type modification and you feel comfortable doing it, we recommend you doing that. Otherwise, just fill out the clear template, roll it up into a barrel, ship it back to us. We'll get the work done that needs to be done, and then ship you a VARA plate that will fit. So we've got the VARA plate right here fitted, and we'll show you that in a second. But basically, if we're just going off of our VARA plate manual, this is our build manual, okay, and the version is 1.1, and this was done in 12 of 22. So if there's any questions, you want to make sure that you have the latest manual updated to either from the website or in your kit. Okay, so it's always best to check the website to see if there's any later versions of whatever you order, whether it be a VARAfoil or VARA plate. In this case, we're mounting a VARA plate on the Yamaha 90 that we discussed earlier. And so from here, you just want to go ahead, once you open up the manual, you want to go ahead and check that you have all the tools that are specified here. You're going to need, you know, and it's not in any necessary order, but you're going to need a battery operated drill with a 3/16 bit. We have that. Okay, you're going to need a temporary marker, and that helps you locate all the points that have to be drilled on the lower unit without scarring the lower unit or permanently marking it. We need one 3/8 inch wrench. We like the closed end and the open end. For our application, we happen to have 2 here. And then we like a small grinder in case there's any small modifications that may need to be made while we're here, or sandpaper, file, whatever the sorts that you may need. We like to just have that on hand. Just use tools that you're comfortable with using, please. Okay, and then we also added a hammer to it and a vice grips, and we'll show you later in the videos why we do that. Now, a kit that comes along with here is your VARA plate install kit. In this install kit, you're going to have enough bolts to do this. In this case, you're going to have 4, 8, 9 total bolts, which is in here. They're carriage bolts. They have fender washers to span the load, and they also have standard stainless steel nuts. That's all stainless steel hardware. We also use this Vibra-Tight thread locker. It's a VC3. We've had really good luck with it. So we put that in your kit so that you can thread lock each nut on the bottom prior to tightening down completely. So we'll show you that installation also. And then of course you'll need a tape measure. And what we're doing now is we're actually finding out that we're improving the lift of the unit if we can seal all the way around the ventilation plate between the sandwich or the mating surface of the ventilation plate and the VARA plate. So we're just using some sort of you know, it doesn't have to be expensive sealant, but we're using a sealant in there on our right before our final install, so that we seal that area so that water isn't able, the pressures of the water aren't able to change through the motor and we have any leakage in there. So that's what we recommend, and then do a wipe down beforehand. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to pause. Hey everybody, so we're back to the VARA plate manual, and we're just going to discuss where we're at now. You know, we went ahead and we checked the tools, and that we got to basically number 5 or number 4 of our instructions for a VARA plate, and it says stop, lay the VARA plate on the anti-ventilation plate to check fit before proceeding. So if the fit looks good on the front, the sides, and the back, you're ready to move forward with the drilling of holes in the lower unit for mounting. If not, do not drill, and please contact us by phone or email. So if you have any questions, you need to contact us or get a hold of your local professional so that he can tell you what needs to happen with this VARA plate install. But anyhow, as you may have seen in the videos before, we have went and pre-fit to this Yamaha 90. Since that video, we noticed that there was a drain plug here. This was the drain level plug. So this is the plug for when the lower unit is filled with oil. That's where the level of the oil should be. So we gave them a little bit of an access to be able to get this plug out enough to go ahead and let the oil come out and check the level for the plug. So it should be enough to get the screw completely out, but in case it's not, it'll be enough to at least let the oil come out of there to where they'll know the level, and then they can put the screw back in and tighten it down. So that's an access place. The other thing we did was we marked up here with a blue marker the ending on both sides of the engine of where the VARA plate ends on the motor. Okay, this is very important because if you get out your schematic, which will be marked for the 40 miles an hour schematic, 40 mile an hour max gray modified PVC VARA plate install pattern, we're going to show you the basically 3-inch zone to where we have to measure back. That's the important part of where we put our first bolt. In other words, if we were to put the first bolt way too far back, we would get too much lift in the front and this thing would peel up, it would collect weeds. Don't think it would break, but it just wouldn't be a structural install. So what we want to do is we want to nail down this first 3 inches, and that'll be a location for our first bolt hole. The other thing we want to point out about this drawing that you may see here is that we're calling for the holes in the anti-ventilation plate to be 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch away from the edge of the anti-ventilation plate. What we'll do is we're going to pull this off now, okay, knowing that it fits, and we always pull it off at an angle so that it slides off easy. And to save time, we've went ahead and actually drew kind of this layout of the drawing actually onto the motor, so it helps you explain. So we've marked the holes to cut the time down, and here we have, up here in this dashed area, we have the 3-inch zone. Okay, this first solid line that you may see inside of the edge of the ventilation plate all the way around, that is your 1/4 inch mark, and then the dotted line represents the 3/8 mark, if you can see that. Okay, so what we did was we took the first mark that's going to be split it all out. It's going to be 3 1/4 inches back from the leading edge. We located that on both sides of the motor. Okay, at 3, the VARA plate, the finish of the VARA plate install. And what we've done is I want to make sure that you're on your correct version of your install manual. Okay, we've already completed some of this beforehand, but we've had to make up some of this video, so we're coming back to it. And I just want to make sure that you're double checking the manual that you're using. And we finished up to where we had shown what the zones were for the 40 mile an hour max gray modified PVC VARA plate, which is what we're installing today. Okay, we're showing you this dark zone up front. Okay, if we were to turn it that way, we're showing you that dark zone up front. We're also showing you this solid line inside that represents the 3/8 line. Okay, and then we went ahead and put another line in here. I'm sorry, the solid line represents a 1/4 inch in from the ventilation. The dotted line represents the 3/8. That's kind of our window area of a 1/4 inch minimum to 3/8 maximum. So we locate that just so we know where our holes need to be. We're aiming for, if you could just get inside that 1/4 inch, it would be perfect. But as long as you're within a 1/4 to 3/8, it kind of gives you a little bit of a window to make your holes drilled. As you can see, the holes are drilled. These holes were marked at 3 1/4, and then this one was 16 and some odd, but there's basically 5.5 inches evenly between holes. So 5.5 from this hole to this hole, 5.5 to this hole to this hole, and then 5.5 to this hole. Then we came in and drilled the center hole, which was right here, with a 3/16 inch drill bit. So that was all done. Once again, we use hex head drill bits, just so you know, in case you're doing this install in the water. We drill up from the bottom, okay? And we came in and cleared the bottom. We stayed in between that window zone, making sure that we never want to be drilling through the actual sidewall of the lower unit, right? So that would damage it. So there's your holes. You can see they're done, and they're ready all the way around to the front, okay? So we wanted to show you that quickly. Now, what we've noticed is we're ready to go back on with our VARA plate. We know the VARA plate fits, so what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to put the VARA plate on here, but we're going to put a soft bead of just a cheap latex caulking. You can use a marine caulking, but what we're finding is that just if you leave this open, the air that can get in here, right, because of the high speed and venturi effect of the water going by, what we want to do is seal this off. Okay, it is the ultimate way to go. So we want to wipe down, you know, our ventilation plate all the way around. There you go. And then we're going to go ahead and put on some of this in this area so that it's sealed off. It doesn't have to be a great big bead, because the only purpose it's serving is to shut down any high or low pressure exchange of water, okay, and keep the air out of this system. So we're coming in and just putting a nice little bead on here. And this putty is actually, because it's a cheaper putty, it'll serve the purpose of sealing it off, but it won't stick to the lower unit in case you were to ever remove this and then did repairs to the holes. You know, with the holes drilled in here, you can still repair this lower unit and repaint it and not know that anything was ever happened. So, you know, we put things on so that they're removable and not permanent. And we'll go ahead and wipe down the bottom of the plate before we put it on. I'm off to the side here where you can't see me. So, and then once again, we're going to always try and put the plate on angled. Okay. Now, the first bolt, I don't know if we told you, but we made a hole here for the drain plug. Okay. And that drain plug just needed a hole that was drilled close to it. When we drilled this hole, we needed to cut the washer a little bit so it gave it continued access. So the washer is going to need to be lined up with that hole, which it is right there. Okay. So we're going to come in and we're going to put these carriage bolts with a 1/4 inch fender washer in from the top. Okay. And I'll line up the center one in the back, that way we get good line up all the way through. Do both sides. As you can tell, this is a pretty straightforward install. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our nuts. And remember our thread locker from before. Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to tap each one of the nuts down here with some thread locker, or the bolts. You can also put the thread locker on before if you want. It's just there to help. With the nuts not falling off, but guess what we're going to do? We're going to do a little trick with the vice grips to where it generally won't let the nuts come off anyhow, because when you do the vice grip trick, it kind of bends the threads a little bit. Now we're putting the nuts on. You never want to hammer those down, by the way. If they don't fit, that you might need to re-drill the metal out, okay? And we're going to run these all the way down. And then that way you don't have so much wrench time, because we do use normal wrenches on this, okay? Again, we're using all stainless steel hardware. This is under the water. You might have a saltwater application, you might have a freshwater application, but in case it's saltwater, we're using all stainless steel hardware. You're going to be needing a 3/8 inch open end wrench or closed end wrench. We use a closed end wrench to tighten these down. You could use a socket set if you wanted. A nut driver generally doesn't work because the thread's sticking out down below. You can't see it, but there's a little bit too much thread. So here's what I do. I normally do the middle one first, guys. And I snug that up, right? So I'll get a nice snugness on the middle one. All right. And then that kind of sets this in place. Right? And just make sure it's setting right. Okay, there, that's nice and snug. And then I'll just work from that. As soon as you snug that one up, you might be able to hand tighten the others some more. I just noticed I just had I brought it down quite a bit. This is a 3/8 closed end wrench. And we're just not in too much of a hurry here. I'll do a little bit on this side, and then we're going to do a little bit on this side, right? The top of the ventilation plate is normally not a flat surface on the outboard motors. I'm not an outboard motor guy, but the top of the ventilation plate, generally, if you were looking at it from the back, would have a little bit of downward angle from the inboard or center line to the outboard side of it. It looks to be about 2 degrees. So because this is independent on the starboard side now, we can go ahead and snug these up from the port side. And generally, when you have this as a proper install, the washers will not turn, and it will snug those down. So you want to make sure they stay center. Okay, I'm going to go up front here and see if I can do it from here. But you're going to want to make sure they stay centered in there so that it's a nice flush fit. And believe me, the wrench popping out of your hand seems to be a normal part of this. So if you're doing it in the water, try and hold on to it so if it pops out, you don't lose your wrench. Notice how these guys are still loose. Let's go ahead and do this one up here. Now this one you can tell when it goes in, because of this knob down here of your assembly of the shaft in here, and I believe the shaft of the motor comes in, you know, and meets this, so there's some sort of a gearing in there. That gearing makes this pretty wide, so when we're drilling from here, we can never get it really straight up and down. If you have some sort of a special drill that would allow that, you know, go ahead and use it. But we generally we'll just use a standard drill, and we'll come in at a little bit of an angle, and then we put a little bit of a slop in the plastic plate so that when it pulls down on it, the bolt head will start to come flush and won't be at the angle, if you understand what I'm saying. You can see right now that bolt head is coming down flush, and that's what we want. It just gives it a nice clean flow and a nice clean look. All right, the starboard side is pretty much done. We're going to work ourselves around to the port side. I'm only going to take this down a little bit more, and then I'm going to go do this one. Okay, I just got snug a little bit, so now I'll pull these others down. Like I said, there's probably faster ways, but by the time you get to this stage, we usually save this for the last thing to do. So your foil's already mounted, your VARA attach is already done. Once you're done with this, and you go through all your checks of everything to make sure that all the nuts are tight and everything is ready to go, and people are clear of the boat, it's time to go have fun. This is usually the end of the VARA assembly. Some of you are getting just the VARA plate, so you won't understand the total difference that I'm talking about, but the VARA plate will help you gain some lift on your motor, and will help also with the actual prop attachment or prop flow, just because what it's doing is, because of its span and width and span, it's not letting air get down to your propeller blade. All right, if you understand helicopters, what limits the speed of a helicopter? Well, the downwind blade is what limits the speed of a helicopter. So the helicopter can go only as fast as the downwind blade is going through the air. Otherwise, you're just getting lift off of one side of the propeller that is going into the wind or turning into the wind. It's kind of the same effect. I'm not a prop expert nor an outboard expert, but you understand that one of those blades happens to become drag, and then the other one of those blades actually becomes push. So I guess if we were to say this in some way that would not sound too stupid, is if you could have a propeller blade with one blade, it would be the most efficient for push, because you wouldn't have that downwind drag or that down current drag of another blade. But we don't have that, right? Because if we went to a one bladed propeller, that would kind of vibrate a lot. So it's just a theoretical deal. Now I'm snugging all these up once again, because what we're going to do as soon as we get these snug, and I'm not doing it so hard that it'll break, I'm just doing it all the same tension. If you were to break one, there's usually an extra one in the kit, okay? But once again, do not try to do that. All right, so there. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you a little trick with vice grips. So you want to make sure that it's part of your toolkits to have ready. You want to have vice grips. Okay, hopefully you can see what's going on here. You can see all the nuts are tight. You can see the Loctite and the sealant that's coming off. But what we do is we adjust the vice grip so that it's off of the nut. We don't push it all the way up to the nut. We want it down just a little bit, and we want to snap it onto the bolt. So in other words, we leave a little gap there. And all we're going to do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Boom. Okay? Snap it off. If you're up against the nut, then you're actually pressurizing the nut. So you want to be just down off of that. Okay? There you go. All right. I'm going to tighten this up a little bit. Hopefully you guys can see what we're doing here. You'll know if you're too close to the nut. Like this one's marginally too close to the nut, and I just had to shorten the stroke, if you notice. So if you get too close to that nut, you're going to have to change your stroke. This one here is short enough to where I've got to really crank down on it to break it. Under the nut. What we're going to do, just to describe a little bit what's going to happen here after we snap all these off, then we're going to take a hammer, because there's a little bit of a sharp edge left there, right? So we'll take a hammer and we'll go ahead and whack it a couple times to flatten that leftover bolt stud out, and it won't be sharp in case somebody were to get their hands in there. Also, that helps it from not coming off. Okay. Okay, we're back. We have a hammer, and we're going to show you real quickly what we do here. We just make sure that that's nice and flush, right? Listen, we don't want to hit this so hard so we're breaking the ventilation plate, right? Our whole purpose of this is we can hold down on this just to give it a little, and we're just whacking that tip of that stud that we've left here and just flattening it out. Same thing here. So we're not trying to damage the motor. We're just trying to flatten that stud out so that one, it doesn't have any sharp edges. Two, it helps keep that nut on there. Because we don't use lock nuts just because of their larger profile, right? Then when we're done with that, we're going to come in with a rag and we're going to do a little cleanup here. And we're going to do a little cleanup here. Okay, because you can tell the silicone's, or the sealant's drying already. And we're going to clean up here. Make sure that's clean there. That's clean there. What happened was the thread lock combined with the sealant that was on there. And instead of a red thread lock, we got a pink rendition of sealant and thread lock. Okay, so guess what? We'll go ahead and pull up on this. Make sure we got proper install. As you can tell by this plate, you can see what I'm pulling up on. Let's see if we can, you can see when we pull up on this plate, that's pulling the entire weight, or almost the entire weight of this motor. I'm putting a lot of pressure on that, and it's pulling everything up. So there you go. That's our install. So pretty easy.